Happy New Year to all my loyal VERITAS listeners around the world. I know it's been a very difficult year for all, but you are here, awake and aware of what is taking place. This places you in a very unique position to navigate 2021. But to help us see what lies ahead, tonight's special guest is back for another year of astrological predictions and commentary. One thing is for sure, the past year brought a lot of awakening to many. And may this year shine more light into the darkness. We all need it.
You are listening to VERITAS. If this is your first time, welcome home. To listen to tonight's full interview and all of our material, join the VERITAS family and click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Don't forget to visit the VERITAS store for focused life force energy, MMS, CBD pure hemp oil, Divina water, pure organic sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and VERITAS seasons, and other great products. And if you want to get in touch with Mel, want to be a guest on this radio program, have a guest suggestion, or have feedback, just click on the contact button of our website at veritasradio.com. And if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. And click the bell to be notified when new interviews are available. And now, here's your host, Mel Hostelrick.
Jeff Harman is a second-generation astrologer and spiritual consultant with over 40 years of experience. He believes conscious self-awareness can lead us out of the matrix of our karmic past, where the soul's journey is revealed in the ancient systems of classical, Vedic, and Kabbalistic astrology. And we have a more comprehensive bio on our website. Jeff's website is jeffharman.com, and Jeff joins us directly from Southern California. Hello, Jeff, and welcome back. Happy New Year. His website is jeffharman.com, and as usual, he joins us directly from Southern California. Hello, Jeff, and welcome back, and Happy New Year.
Hey, same to you, Mel, and what a year it is, huh?
Incredible.
Been, I should say.
And just before we begin with the astrology, I just have to say, this is being recorded the day before, on the 6th, and it's right now almost 2 p.m. Pacific time, and I have to tell you, what the news, if you're watching the news or if you've been watching the news, you are being brainwashed, and especially this part about the Trump supporters breaching the perimeter and barging into the Capitol. One female has died, I believe, from a gunshot wound to the neck. But think about it. Why would Trump supporters suddenly, get violent right as one of their own is defending the move to reject and investigate the fraud? To me, that sounds like a false flag agent, Jean provocateurs, Antifa, all over the place.
Yep. It's clearly a very, very interesting time, and the astrology certainly shows that.
Let's talk about the astrology. Let's talk about the astrology because last year, after I had you on, I also, at the beginning of the year, had an individual, a gentleman from Brazil. His name is Juscelino Nóbrega da Luz. A lot of people have been commenting lately after the election because he said he has precognitive dreams. And among some of the things that he said that Biden was going to win. And at the time, of course, everybody laughed. The only way that Biden's going to win is if he steals the election or his apparatus steals the election. Well, this is where we are today. We don't know what's going to happen with Trump. Is he going to stay? Is he not going to stay? Does astrology factor in fraud, Jeff?
Yes, it does. You and I were talking about that. I mean, the interesting thing about interrogation astrology, which is really, it's a form of divinational. It's data orientated. It's based on interactive consciousness of what you ask about. And, it's interesting because I saw Trump winning in a landslide, but I also said, in fact, I was on Jimmy Church's show, and I said, you're not going to know who the president is right away. And the reason why, Mercury went retrograde 3 weeks before this last election. And for anybody that doesn't know what that means, that appears like Mercury goes backwards from Earth's perspective. And there's 3 phases to it, and I'll spare you all the technical details. But the bottom line is it went direct exactly on the day of the election in a 90-degree sustained square to Saturn. So what does that all mean in plain English? I mean, if there was ever an attempt at fraud, I think the astrology clearly, unequivocally would show that that's what happened. And of course, we've heard all the reports. The interesting thing is the sustained square to Saturn. We have consistently seen every single branch of government. And I'm talking the Department of Justice has rolled over, the FBI. I think they've investigated a 7-Eleven robbery more than they have this election. You've had every state legislature and court throw it out or ignore it. You've had the Supreme Court jump back and say, well, we can't get involved with this. So, and today, as we speak, we have Pence pretty much, I think he's going to roll over. I don't think he's going to do the invokement of I think it's the 12th Amendment, correct me if I'm wrong, but where he could, in fact, say we're going to reject the votes and we're going to send it to the House, and then the House has to vote. And I believe there's 236 that would go to Trump and 222 to Biden, which would put him in. But again, I don't think that's likely to happen. I mean, he said so as much. So, when you look at all of this, I mean, it looks to me like Trump's not only on the ropes, but he's down for the count, and the count's to number 9, and one more and he's out. Because when, the House and the Senate gets done with their objections and debates, if Pence doesn't object to this, or he certifies the Electoral College votes, I mean, it's really looking like curtains for Trump. Yet, I know this sounds crazy, and I actually, with the words coming out of my mouth, actually think it sounds crazy to me too. But I cast an interrogation, particularly this morning, and I have done so consistently. And I still get he's got a path. There's the 2018 EO, and I'm of course speaking logically here now, but I'm also looking at the chart. I don't think he's done yet. And if you listen to Trump's speech this morning, yes, we wanted to hear some earth-shattering things that he didn't say. He pretty much was still providing evidence of the fraud and the things that, of course, the court won't hear. But I still say that's 2 trump cards he's got, no pun intended, left, where he could still come back. And that is A, the 2018 foreign interference executive order, and B, he's also got the possibility of declaring some type of insurrection. I forget what the proper legal terms are, but I don't think he's done yet. That's what this chart shows. And I know people listening are going to go, well, come on now. How could Trump possibly come back from his own vice president basically walking out on him? Wouldn't you agree?
I would disagree, and I would agree with some points, but let me just say this. This morning, this part of January the 6th, it was advertised as everybody's going to go there, all the supporters. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, what if this is a trap? This is a deep state trap to present Trump supporters as these goons that are going inside. They went inside of Pelosi's office. They stole a computer and all that. And then there was a message that a lot of people didn't see. Sorry?
Yeah, people have been shot. It's really violent.
Right. So blame the Trump supporters. Get rid of them. Come on now. Let's just move on. Let's turn the page and unite, as they say. But then a few minutes ago, I don't know if you saw, but there was a video message from Trump. And what's his name? Dorsey from Twitter deleted it or banned it so that people don't see it. But he's basically saying, go home, go in peace. And I have to say, I want to remain optimistic here, but I also want to remain realistic. He looked pretty defeated as he's telling people to go home. And in the past week, I've received some what looks to be earth-shattering information. I'm not talking about only Linwood. I'm talking about much more. Obama involved, Soros involved. We all suspected this. Italy, leaders of the European Union. Incredible stuff. And the problem is, no court is giving it a minute to listen to the evidence. And this is when I said, if a miracle doesn't happen, we are done, Jeff. We are done. And I'm hoping that astrology rules, but we are done, and I'm concerned about your children, my children, our grandchildren, and our future as a country.
Well, and look at the election in Georgia, too. That I knew yesterday watching that. I said, you watch. By midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, Ossoff and the other one will win. And they did. Warnock won. I mean, there's no question that that's probably, I mean, they're using the same crooked, or you could say weighted dice in the same crooked tables, if you want to use the gambling analogy. And it's kind of ironic that this didn't get shut down quicker with the Dominion. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. The problem, and this is what you and I were talking about before the show, is there was a little something Obama put in, I think it was back in 2012. It's called the HR 4310. And a lot of people dispute this, but there's a subsection in there that's very dangerous. It basically allows military psyops to be used through social media and also the media. And this is exactly what's happening. No matter who gets in, and this is what the astrology shows, the next 4 years, particularly this next couple of years, is a really dangerous time for this country, because we're going to see, I think, so much disinformation. When you take what is happening on almost all the media networks, you can see how staged it is. There's literally, like VERITAS, the other VERITAS that came out, basically exposed. There's coaching going on a lot of these major media stations where they're literally coaching and getting the teleprompters all set up to promote a particular agenda. This is not news. This is propaganda. And that's what the HR 4310 and the subsections allowed to happen. And again, Trump has said, it's fake news. I think it's a lot more than fake news. And this is the problem. This whole machine is operating and has created so much dissension and so much, I think, belief systems in the American public that nobody knows what to believe anymore. And it's like alternate realities. It's 1984 is actually a light book and movie compared to what's going on right now. We're already in a war with the whole communist issues, whether it be China and also their cohorts, which is the people behind George Soros, the people behind, it's the New One World Orderers, and we'll never know their names. But, we've heard of Klaus Schwab and others. Those are just people we hear about. I really believe deeply behind the scenes this is what's going on. And people are thinking this is all about Trump and Biden. It's really not. It's about globalism and communism, literally outright socialistic. I think socialism's even light to talk about. I think it's really going to go to communism and versus nationalism. And they so far have been very successful at thwarting Trump. And again, I hope I'm right, and I'm really going out on a limb, because consistently for the last 2 months, I have said, even though it looks like it's not going to happen somehow, some way, he still has a path here. And I know that sounds crazy. You have to remember, until January 20th, that someone is sworn in, there is no finalization on this. I think the one thing that I heard this morning with Trump is he's clearly not giving up. There is absolutely no way he's conceding. He's going to contest this. This is exactly what the astrology shows. So the interrogation I'm looking at right now, believe it or not, and I know everyone's really, saying that's it, Biden's going to be president. I still see that this is not finished. And this is what I said in Jimmy Church's show 2 months ago. I said, you're not going to know who the president is right away. This is going to be a colossal mess. Even Thomas Jefferson, though he was the vice president and did what Pence should do, and Pence is probably not going to do. We'll find that out here in the next day or two, because I think this will go on for a while. I think there is still going to be avenues that Trump is going to pursue. Any way you slice this, the astrology says for the United States, and by the way, I'm using something known as the United States Sibley chart. The inauguration, whoever ever is signed in, and I know I'm going to be chastised for this, it is possible we may not even have an inauguration on the 20th. And if I think things are going to get really dicey between now and March 26th. We're in something called a Kala Sarpa Yoga. Now, people may say, what the heck is that? That's where all the planets are in between the moon's north node, where eclipses happen, and the south node, where eclipses happen. It's called the Kala Sarpa Yoga. It's a strange word, and it's very fated. And ironically, Trump was born with one. The moon broke it. These often are extremely fated incarnations. And by the way, the COVID thing broke out last year, January. It kicked in exactly. We had the Pluto-Saturn conjunction on January 15th of 2020. And I've been warning about that on your show, Mel, for years. Remember that, everyone? What do you think of the Mayan calendar? And I said, not a thing. I said, watch out for 2020. And look what we've had. Not only have we had a literal back-breaking global pandemic, right? And you can call it what it is. Some folks do call it a scamdemic, a pandemic, or a plandemic. But I think the latter is somewhat accurate, plan. I do think COVID's real, and I think they're also working on another strain that's coming through. But nonetheless, whatever, I don't want to get into that conspiracy theory. The bottom line is, I would say the astrology depicted it to the T. We had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January. Right after that, we went into a very nasty Kala Sarpa Yoga. Again, all the planets between the moon's north and south nodes, all the way up until May. The minute May got done, boom, George Floyd. Hell broke loose, riots everywhere. The cities burn. Right after that, boom, Jacob Blake. It's like clockwork. And then we, of course, led up to the election. And the election, again, another bit of insanity. And the astrology is really depicted it all. And I got to say, what's eerie about the United States, particularly between right now and March 26th, that's when that Kala Sarpa Yoga breaks. Mars will break that. Mars will go over what we call the South Node, and it will do so right on March. It's between the 25th and 26th. It's right around in there. And this is exceedingly powerful. It's actually the North Node. I was correct. I looked at my notes here. So what does this mean? Well, also, we have the United States Sibley chart, which some astrologers use different astrology, but this is the purported time when the Declaration of Independence was commenced to be signed, which is about to be relocated to the museum pretty soon. Almost already is. But that chart, no matter which chart astrologers use, we have basically that chart is one reference point. We have Saturn by transit in the sky going to go over the United States South Node. When? Right as all this gets cooking here in March. So between now and March, we're going to see some really unprecedented things. I mean, it's actually, it's about in a tropical zodiac, the end of March, beginning of April when it happens. But see, this is what's a little ambiguous when you're dealing with the country that's a couple hundred years old. We're 240 something odd years old. Is you also have to look at the sidereal zodiac, and the two are off by, in terms of the transits on this country, by about a month and a half. So I just can say this, that the energy on this whole election thing is going to be really dicey between now and the latter part of March, beginning of April. Really, really dicey. Expect the unexpected. Expect things that we just can't imagine. That's what I see here. Let's
go step by step, because I like to dissect some of the things that you've said, but just so that people know, going back to this breach at the Capitol, how was one of the most secure buildings in the world on a day every single high-value VIP in government was convening inside and able to be breached by bearded hippies in MAGA hats? And a contact that I have said, I have a friend who is at the Capitol in D.C., and she said the doors were opened to allow them in. And let me go back also to what you said about HR 4310. And you and I discussed this for years, but I discussed it in detail in my first edition of the Corona Chronicles earlier last year actually, because people need to understand this is at the root of the problem. This is the better known as the National Defense Authorization Act. And what happened was that part of that bill included the reenactment, or the amendment rather, of the Smith-Mundt Act, which was passed in the 40s during World War II, in order for us to be able to issue propaganda around the world, which is normal during wartime. But what Obama did, and people say, no, it was not Obama, let's call it the deep state, in 2013, is that they changed that so that they could do the same thing legally in the United States. It was illegal to lie using the media. So when you turn on Fox or CNN or MSNBC or whatever on TV, you are being lied to because it's legal. It's nothing but a propaganda machine.
That's right. It absolutely is. And there's so much disinformation on the internet as well, purposely put out there. So some of it you can trust, a lot of it you can't. And this is the other thing that I see going on with the United States. Now, depending on which chart you use, if you use the sidereal chart, this year we have transiting Neptune opposing natal Neptune. Now, isn't that interesting? Now, for anybody that doesn't know what that means, Neptune always has to do with illusion, confusion, fraud, and subterfuge type activities. And we have, for the first time ever in the existence, well, actually, it happened again. But see, it happened. This is actually the first time it's happened in modern times. I'll just say that. It takes about 180 plus years for this to go around. So this is a major time that it's actually happened. And this is all happening this year 3 times. Now, if you use a sidereal zodiac, it's actually going on longer, up until 2023. I can tell you, whoever gets in, ultimately, this is not going to be an easy 4 years based on the United States charts anyhow, no matter who's president. The reason why, we also have a Pluto return coming up 3 times in 2022, and if you use the sidereal zodiac, it's going on all the way up until 2024. Now, what might that mean? Total transformation to the structures of this nation, which is kind of what we're witnessing right now. So it's going to go one way or the other, where it's total transformation to the positive or total transformation to the negative. I like to be optimistic, but I think it's going to be a little bit of both. Again, people are going to think I'm crazy, and I've heard that, people say, well, how can you possibly say Trump has a snowball's chance in hell right now to win the presidency, when every single agency, every single, legal, judicial branch of government has declared Biden, the guy who never campaigned, the winner. And I still see he's got a path here. I don't think this is over yet. I think Trump may actually overturn this thing. And I know that's crazy, but it ain't done yet. It ain't done till the fat lady sings. Well, I can tell you, that singing's about to happen pretty soon.
I can see the media turning things. And for example, what happened last weekend with the phone call, they were saying, oh, look, he's trying to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to get him some votes. They just extrapolated 4 minutes out of a 1 hour conversation. Nothing wrong, just like the other phone calls to Ukraine and the rest of them. I have an email here, and I usually get a lot of emails from this listener of ours, a very enlightened individual, Bernard from Australia. And I wasn't going to read it, but he sent it a few days ago, and it seems that it's coming to be true. And I'd like to read it, if I might, for a moment, quickly here. He says, there is a theory that I heard. One, come January 6th, Pence will backstab Trump and hand over the presidency to Biden. That's still at play. Let's be honest about that. Two, Trump has no choice than to invoke the Insurrection Act and bring the U.S. military. We've heard that too. Three, all the media around the world will call this a coup d'etat and call Trump a dictator. The Democrats will appeal to the United Nations. And I'm reading this because I'm getting a lot of email and stuff from friends who are telling me you are supporting a coup. So the propaganda is already making people feel that we are supporting a coup. Number four, UN quote-unquote peacekeeping army will then get involved. China will be at the forefront of this. Not to mention the leftists in the USA will probably take up arms and join the UN and Chinese troops against the U.S. military. And a quick parenthesis about this, where is Justin Trudeau? I'm hearing from my friends in Canada, they haven't seen him in before the New Year. 5, this is how the Chinese invade the USA by way of the UN, and this is why U.S. military is right now on high alert. Think about it.
That's exactly right. There's 4 battle groups off the coasts right now.
Yes, East and West Coast. And he ends by saying this. He says, think about it. If China invades USA out of the blue without reason, they will be perceived as the quote-unquote bad guys by the world. They will be in the same position as Germany back in World War II. So how does China invade USA while maintaining the positive image in the public eyes? This is it. By piggybacking the UN peacekeeping army under the pretense of saving USA from a dictatorship. This is the perfect mechanism to take control of the USA while at the same time being perceived as, quote unquote, the savior by the world. What do you think about this, Jeff?
Well, I think something like that is real possible because, again, everyone thinks, how can I possibly say this? Well, first off, it's not my opinion. I'm only looking at the astrology. And the only way I'm going to be wrong is if I'm interpreting it wrong. I don't think this thing is done. And if you listen to Trump today, whether you like Trump or hate Trump, you certainly have to agree with me if you think about it for a minute, the way he prefaced everything he said. He's not giving up. He's not going to concede. It's not in his blood. He will not walk away. He is going to fight this to the end of time. The military has just been largely repositioned to be more directly under his control. That was all done since the election, since November. There's been a lot of changes. And I can tell you there's more military activity going on in this country than I have seen ever. I've heard reports from clients and also other reliable sources that the bases are cooking. I had one person tell me, it's actually a relative, said that a particular guy who's been in the military for, I think, close to 20 years now, and he has a lot to do with munitions being approved to go out to the Navy and the Air Force, et cetera. And they've never seen this kind of hardware being deployed. We are in a very, very dangerous situation. If Trump does what I think he's going to do, he's either going to invoke the 2018 executive order or insurrection. He's not going to lay down. He's not going to lay down. What you just said, Mel, and what your email said is what I more see happening. Something is going. I said this back in February. Hell's coming to breakfast, and I hope I'm wrong about that. But I think we're going to see unprecedented things happen between now and March, and beginning of April, and we very well could see, in northern Wisconsin, I'm sure you heard about this. There's the pilot, I believe, is still missing from that F-16 that was purportedly shot down. And also there was this rumor that there was a UN group of troops that might have been infiltrated with Chinese as well in an underground base in Maine. So I thought, okay, great, that could be just conspiracy theories and rumors. I saw the data on the seismic activity, and it's definitely not seismic activity. It's something that was very abrupt. And I cast a chart, and I think there's some truth to it. I think right now we are witnessing some things that are going to happen that are going to be off the charts. We've never seen it before. I think today's events in the Capitol are mightier compared to what we're about to see. I think it's really going to get crazy here, and because the deep state, whatever you want to call them, the New World Order is not going to take this lightly. They're going to retaliate, and the interesting thing is Trump's not going to lay down. He's not going to lay down. That's what the chart shows. He is steadfast and going to push this through. He's not going to roll over. That's what the charts say.
We have to come to the realization that this country has been taken over from within. Every branch of government has been infiltrated by Democrat, Marxist, let's call them what they are. And I know it's not all of them, but mostly the ones on top, American communists, and also Republican rhino turncoats. If what you're saying is true, and I've heard that, the F-16, the pilot is missing, I heard it was also on the border with Canada, that thousands of troops, and people have sent me video of troops marching in the streets of Canada because Trudeau allowed them to go and practice over there. So we have Justin Castro, or Trudeau, whatever you want to call him, up in Canada. I'm surprised with Mexico. He has been saying, I'm not going to congratulate Biden until this is settled, which I appreciate that. But, you know, when it comes to astrology, somebody sent me this a few weeks ago. He said, Aquarius will rule 2021. And you might agree with that. February 2021 will have 7 planets in the sign of Aquarius. The last time this happened, the Dark Ages ended and the Renaissance, the rebirth, began. The time of plagues ended and a spirit shift began. So starting February 2021, a revolution of mind and spirit will begin. Does this align with your research?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of people are declaring this to be the Aquarian age. What I want to clarify is you got astrology is complex. You have sidereal astrology. The conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn is what happened in the first degree of Aquarius in a tropical zodiac, not in a sidereal. So, and I agree that is a 240 mutation conjunction, if you use the tropical systems, that I think is ushering in a new era. The problem is with these new eras, they never happen easy. Just like we saw the last one 240 something years ago. What did we see? We see monarchies fall. We saw the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Now we're seeing a totally different situation. This is the birth of a high-tech revolution. I still maintain we're going to see technology rocket forward in so many areas, in energy, transportation. I think it's going to be like the Jetsons in another 10, 15 years. I really do. I think it's going to happen. The problem is we're also dealing with this whole convulsion. The United States, as well as China, are both in something known as Sati. Now, people may hear that and say, well, what does that mean? Well, Saturn is transiting the moon of both the Chinese Communist Party chart as well as the United States. Now, what does that mean? That means total transformation. And we hear China has been arming itself outside of the nuclear agreements and treaties with unprecedented amount of nuclear warheads right now. Pompeo just came out with that the other day. I think the United States has been too. That's what I've heard, is that we have been off the charts right now, gearing up. And I hope what happens here doesn't lead us into some major conflict. I don't think China wants to get into a direct conflict with us. I don't think they'd win in an iron war. I really don't. They will if Biden gets in and he guts the military again and opens the back door. Because he will. But right now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the stakes are so much higher right now than we know. See, this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is what brought that in. These always bring very powerful, tumultuous changes. And consistent with the human race, we never seem to do it without an event. Well, I think this is the event right now. We're in it. I'm not saying there's going to be war, but it does look like there's going to be a lot of conflict here. A lot of conflict, a lot of skirmishes, and a lot of trouble. The martial law may have to be declared just to keep the peace. But I can tell you, with the amount of firepower they got out there right now on our coasts, as well as in the South Pacific Pacific seas is pretty formidable. And a lot of people don't know this, but we have these new Virginia-class submarines. They say there's only one done. I hear there's many more than that. How many, I don't know. But they're like Hunt for the Red October. They can park right off the coast. They don't even know we're there. Plus all the space weaponry and other things, psychotronic as well as pulse weapons. You could see some serious stuff go on, but I think it's going to be more high tech. And that's what the chart shows. We're not going to see some normal, conventional, landing on the shores with troops. I think this is much more high tech. We're already experiencing that. Look at, we already heard they breached the nuclear, firewalls, and they push that back. This is more what I see going on, is this whole 5G issue combined with very high-tech cyber wars that are going to be very tactical. Even the AT&T building was very questionable. I really don't think that happened like they told us it happened. There's several versions of this information already out on the net, or a few that I've heard. But I think that was a direct attempt to thwart information in that AT&T building, and we'll never know the complete story on that. The bottom line is, what the astrology shows is this country, as well as China, are going to be going through some serious issues. And again, I'm going out on a limb here. I think, everyone can call me crazy because, like we said, Trump's not only on the ropes, he's down. The referee's at count 9. So how could he possibly get up? He's got everyone pummeling him. The chart says different. I mean, I could be wrong, but I got to say, and believe me, my logical left brain mind, Mel, is going to me, how could I say this? And yet that's what the chart leans towards. It just shows exceedingly difficult. Even Jimmy Church said the same thing to me back on election night. He said, how can you say that? It looks like Biden's got it. And I said, I can tell you're not going to know who the president is. Here we sit, January 6th. We don't know who the president is yet, even though the media has declared Biden. The media has proclaimed he's president-elect. But the operative word here is elect. And again, had Trump come out this morning at his rally and said, well, folks, it's been a good run, but I think I got to wrap it up and go away. We did not hear those words. What we heard was a defiance. Not only am I going to keep fighting, no, we heard a defiance that he's going to win. Same thing in Georgia. And I got to say, when I cast this interrogation, I was going, how's he going to do it? And it shows the difficulties that lie ahead and the challenges that are about to ensue. I'm actually looking at it on the screen right now. You can't see it, but I gotta say, it looks like this is not going to go the distance, if I'm correct, on Biden. It's going to look at the last minute. And again, I think it'll be mayhem, because the programming that has been done on everyone with the media, you have basically every news channel is hate Orange Man news. They hate Orange Man, and that's it. And they'll put these paid for pundits on that, just sit there and support everything. So you've got a lot of people who really do hate Orange Man, meaning Trump. They really do. And you have a lot of people who are totally for him. So I'm trying to be objective here. I'm not promoting Trump or demoting Trump. I'm not trying to promote Biden or demote Biden. I'm just trying to be as objective as I can. And I would say this ain't over yet. And I think he's got a shot. I really do. But it's not going to be pretty how he gets there. And I don't think it's going to be with Pence.
Well, that's the other thing. A lot of people, and by the way, let me just say this. A lot of people ask me all the time, Mel, do you follow Q? Are you into it, the anons and this and that? And I've always said it from the beginning. I hope it's all true. I just don't like to give people a false sense of hope. And this is sometimes, let's just play devil's advocate for a moment. What if it's a psyop? What if it's a psyop to keep people, all those Trump supporters, calm? Like, no, don't go out there. Trust the plan. It's going to happen. It's going to be biblical. I see all that, and I read it, and I am hopeful. but I do not manifest it in my mind. We just need to do it, because otherwise the inaction, it keeps you inactive as to what you really need to do. But let me just digress for a moment here. The COVID relief bill includes the newest one, a 180-day deadline. You probably know this, for the CIA and the intelligence apparatus to give us what they know about UFOs. And then again, I question, why the Space Force? Why the existence and the advent of the Space Force when the U.S. Air Force already had Space Command? What do you see happening this year when it comes to UFOs and the extraterrestrial reality?
Well, that's a good one. I don't know. Let me cast a chart and see. So what I'm doing right now is casting an interrogation. Let me see. So what you're basically saying, so I fully understand this, is will there be disclosure, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I only type in what the consciousness surrounding the question is. See, that's another thing, too. I really believe, and I've literally met with Camille over the years, guys in the military who have literally sworn and written books that we have seen light orbs around installations. That's why I don't see an all-out nuclear war. I don't see a major war erupting. I see very high-tech tactical stuff. I forget what show I was on back in November. In December, I said, watch it. I said, things are going to start coming loose. Now, we may not have heard that on the mind control media, but I believe a lot of stuff has been happening behind the scenes that we haven't heard about. It's not being reported. Unless you got somebody planting themselves in front of a high definition camera and reading their teleprompter telling you about it, you're not going to hear about it. And the media is so untrustworthy in this country right now. And the problem is many of the social media things you can't trust either. I think they're hammering away at disinformation and that as well. So let's look at this. So your question is, will there be disclosure?
Well, actually, let me just ask the question properly. The Pentagon has 6 months to disclose what it knows about UFOs. My question is, will we see something tangible, or is it just going to be more propaganda and perhaps the last card that Von Braun talked about?
I would have to say more the latter. It doesn't look like a clean disclosure on it, and it doesn't. I would love to be wrong, but that's what I got to tell you what the chart says. See, the moon in this chart is squaring Pluto and squaring Mercury, which is information and also disclosure to the public. And I would have to say this chart says don't expect a clean disclosure. It's not going to happen from what I can see. Yeah, which is fairly consistent. We hear this stuff all the time. Tucker Carlson, many others have coming out with their little UFO driblets is what I call them. But we've never seen anything definitive and clear. And I would tend to say that's what this looks like. It may roll out over years, but not any clean break disclosure on this. That whole issue of extraterrestrials, you and I have talked about this before, Mel. I was at Fox Pictures, the studios, not the news, but actually Fox Studios over on Pico with Camille. And it was interesting because the guy who was a Marine came up and overheard us talking about some things and started telling us, after he knew who we were and was a little more comfortable, about how much they have been watching with very sophisticated equipment this opening that's under Zuma Beach. It's right off the coast of Malibu there.
Malibu, yeah.
And it's a huge opening. In fact, I used to teach a class at a college years ago, and I'll never forget this. I was standing at the class drawing on the blackboard, and we started talking about, something to do with torsion waves and physics and all that. And he said, "Oh, my dad is an admiral in the Navy." And he says, we've been taking submarines under the California coast and going almost all the way to Salt Lake City. And that is so honeycombed under this whole West Coast shelf, particularly down here. And this Marine was telling me the same thing. He says, we see craft coming in and out of there that is nearly instantaneous, where they will leave from the water to the outer portions of our atmosphere. The propagation is so instantaneous. We got nothing that comes close to that. And, in a way, that gives me comfort, because I don't believe that you can call them angels, you can call them extraterrestrials. I think we're surrounded by both, personally. I think we're at a point right now we're not going to see this planet allowed to be just blown up with nuclear weapons or some other type of mass destructive things. I do think tactical things, they're not going to intervene. But I think at a mass destruction, there's too many souls here having experiences. And that's exactly what this chart shows. To bring this to closure, Mel, I would say the answer to the question is don't expect any full disclosure. You'll get bits and pieces and driblets.
I've always said it from day one. And then in doing this, you become, it's not pessimistic, you become more realistic. I've always said that if you hear disclosure from your mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream media, don't believe it. It's just, why would the military industrial complex, the health, the pharmaceutical complex, and the automotive industry, the oil industry, all of them, why would they want to disclose something that may render their industries useless and profitless? Why would they do that unless there's a hidden agenda? And in this case, it will be the introduction of a one world government, one world military. What Reagan said of the United Nations in the 1980s, we need to unite against a common threat from above.
Yeah. I mean, all of that is interesting that he would state that. I have always said I think it's a lot more like Men in Black than we may know. I have seen, traveling across the Midwest and the West, even the Upper East Coast, in driving over the years, stuff that has just been phenomenal. I've had things happen to me. I've had motorcycles shut down with no electrical energy at all. I mean, literally arcing the batteries. And then the next day they would start. I used to map stuff in the 70s over northern Wisconsin because I grew up there, and inexplicable. My dad used to say, Jeff, you're crazy. And I'd say, oh yeah, here, it's 3:30 in the morning. Get out of bed, come down here and tell me I'm crazy. And he'd look through the telescope. Yeah, you're right. That's pretty weird. I'm like, yeah. And look at that one over there. So, I mean, this kind of stuff I think has been going on. My grandmother, who was born in 1907, used to tell me some stuff that would go on in the farm in Illinois that was really bizarre. I've had some very rational people. And again, I've sat with Camille in meetings and heard people who've given talks, military people who've said, this is what we know and this is what happens. And that's going to work for China, just like us, and Russia as well. So I don't know that we're going to see any major, kind of war like that. I think more what we're going to see is very high-tech tactical stuff going on. And again, this all comes full circle back to what the show's about. Is Trump got a prayer in hell? Has he got a snowball's chance of winning or overturning this when he's got every single judicial, governmental, and otherwise media, for sure, against him and declaring him the loser? And now they're turning it into he's the tyrant. And this is what will happen. And I think he's going to invoke either the 218 EO or the Insurrection Act. I think something like that is going to happen. And the only way that's going to happen is with the military with him. And I think the backlash is going to be tremendous on it. But I think that's where it might go. And
this is when the rest
not rule out this.
This is when the rest of the world, and even in the United States, are going to call this a coup d'etat. They're going to say Trump. I mean, I already see it on Facebook. People are saying Trump is trying to create a coup d'etat. He's going to establish a dictatorship. But isn't it interesting that the Arecibo, not to digress, the Arecibo radio telescope that collapsed in Puerto Rico a few weeks ago, and while this was happening, the media was saying, oh, but look at China. They have a new radio telescope over there. So ours collapses and China rises. Isn't it interesting that everything that's happening, COVID-19, comes from Wuhan, China, comes here? All of a sudden, during the New Year's, you should see the pictures I've seen. No one wearing a mask, no vaccine. Wuhan is completely in business. Yet we are here under lockdown. Don't go for Christmas. Don't go for Thanksgiving. Don't see your family, your elderly parents. But China, Doesn't have
anything.
anything.
It's not just here, Mel. I'm talking to people all over the globe.
Oh, yeah.
Australia.
Oh.
Did you know that I have a client in Europe, he said that I think it was 4 guys were sitting on a porch having a drink over I think it was in Thanksgiving. It was right before Christmas. And what happened was they were arrested. They were put in jail because they were sitting on their own porch in their own backyard for not having a mask on. Newsom wants to make it so that it's literally a terrorist act without a mask. And yet the data supports that masks don't stop a thing. It's really been utilized to great effect. And I'm not saying COVID isn't real, but I've got clients who run hospitals, and they've all said, and doctors included, listen, the numbers aren't what they are. But if we say that, we could lose our license. We could get in big trouble. This is a top-down, exceedingly powerful grip on the entire medical profession. And again, there's no flu anymore. I mean, what happened to the 75 million cases of flu? Well, I guess they're gone, right?
They've been recategorized as COVID-19.
Yeah. And I'm not saying COVID isn't real. What I am saying is they're completely skewing the numbers compared to what most professionals have told me should be. And if they say anything, they're going to get in big trouble. They're knocked off social media immediately. In fact, what I just said will make sure you'll get knocked off social media with this show right here. And again, I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. I'm reporting what I have heard by professionals in the medical industry. And I think that COVID was on the radar screen probably the fall of 2019 into October is what it showed. This thing was set up to happen and released. And I think it's been used to great effect. And here's another problem. If Biden gets in, which, all indicators look like he could, I can tell you he'll shut this place down. They will decimate the middle class. Yeah. Unequivocally, we will be on socialized support and programs, and you won't have a middle class. And it's not just happening here. It's happening globally. I'm talking to shamans in the jungle who can't get a shuttle or a boat down the Amazon. It's been there for 80, 100 years. I mean, everywhere, every corner of this earth, Europe, Asia, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South America. It's just been so prominent how powerfully effective this COVID has been. And I can tell you that's one of the problems we're going to see here. They will finish the job if Biden is sworn in. And I think Trump is really looking at this as trying to prevent out and out communism coming in. And again, I'm not here promoting Trump. I'm not here, anything else. I only can tell you the charts look like this is going to be very difficult, exceedingly difficult. And I'm actually amazed that it says he's still got a really viable shot here and he's going to use it. So again, if I'm wrong, folks can throw darts at my picture. If I'm right, or the chart is right, it leans towards this is going to be a very, very challenging situation between now and spring. But coming out the other end, Trump may just be standing. They've been dancing on his grave for the last 4.5, 5 years now since he ran in 2016. I was the only one who said he was going to win. And I still think he did win based on the astrology, but I also think the fraud, and you were asking before, can astrology show fraud? Well, it did. That's exactly what I was saying, is with Mercury retrograde 3 weeks before this election and a sustained square to Saturn, whether you believe it or not, and I'm not talking to you, I'm saying anyone listening, if there wasn't fraud, then I guess I'm going to stop reading astrology. The fraud is so rampant in that chart, I couldn't believe it. And that's exactly what I said on a couple of shows. I said, you're not going to know who the president is right away. And I still think this thing is in the air. I really do. And after Trump had, been basically abandoned by Pence, and he's doing it as we speak, and I think he will. He's as much as said so as well, and that's what the chart shows. But that still is not going to be the nail in the coffin. Trump will still come back. He's defiant. He will not give up.
I laugh when I see Biden say, "I am not for sale." And I'm thinking, no, you're not. You've already been bought by China. But this pandemic part, people have to understand that already the information is out there showing that the script was written by China on how to control and take over the population. Because again, I said it from the beginning. Look, come February, this started in January in Wuhan. Come February, after the Chinese New Year or March, you'll see all their shops open. They're going to be back in business. If that's the case, that means this is well orchestrated. And yes, look at it. It's been, a little bit more than 10 months, 12, 11 months after the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Well, this is going to continue. I don't think if Biden wins, we're not going back to the normal that we know. What's going to happen is technology, as you mentioned. This is the new age. Call it the age of Aquarius. I call it the age of AI, where technology will be taking over. I'm already reading information that FICO score, you probably know what that is, the Fair Isaac score that determines the credit worthiness of the American population. They want to add to that your searches, your online searches. So for the people who are listening, you better hide your searches. They're going to go back and see where you've been, just like the Sesame score in China. This is how they're going to be doing that.
You can't. If you're connected through cable or you've got a smartphone of any kind, you can't hide it because all that stuff is routed through cable companies. They have total access to it. There are algorithms right now in China and in Russia too, I've heard, that everything you do, every text you make is databased, categorized, and also organized into profiles. And if you do anything inconsistent with what they want, you will be brought to re-education if it's severe enough. People think that couldn't happen here. We are so close to that, your head will spin. I think if Biden gets in, we will see that literally within 6 months to a year here. I really do. And people say, well, how could that happen? This is America. Well, no, it's not anymore. You have to remember, I don't think we've hit the Aquarian age, and I'd like to clarify that. A lot of folks are declaring this the Aquarian age. I got news for you. It doesn't seem like it to me. That was a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the first degree of Aquarius. The Aquarian age, just FYI, will happen when the sun and the solar system ingress into the sidereal sign of Aquarius. Now, they've been saying this has been the Aquarian age since the 70s. I remember the harmonic convergence, 1970 something. Oh, we're in the age of Aquarius. Well, I don't think is going to happen, and I'm not claiming I'm right, but I don't believe that's going to happen for a couple of 100 years yet. I really do. I think it's that far away. And the Hebrew calendar seems to be a pretty accurate reference point. You have to remember our solar system moves, it's called the precession of the equinoxes, 1 degree every 72 years. Okay, so and if all the calculations are right, we hit the sign of Pisces somewhere between the 2nd and 5th century. That's when it wasn't the birth of Christ. It was a little bit later. And here's the point. It's about a 2,100 year period. Well, if you do the math, that's right where we're at. Now, there's going to be people who hear this and they're going to say, well, no, you're wrong. But I've seen so much data on this, and I'm not claiming I'm right. I do not believe that what we just had happen on the 21st, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, is the Aquarian age. I do think this is the beginning of, I like your expression, the AI high-tech revolution. I'm absolutely convinced we are now in a new era, very much like we had with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The horse got retired, and we started seeing the automobile, planes, trains, and all that stuff really become a way of life. We're going to see high technology really become a way of life. The internet is clearly here to stay, and we're going to see things coming through with 5G and other new technologies coming out, releases of energy, advances in medicine, all that's coming. The danger is, will it be in a totalitarian system that makes the movie 1984 look like, child's play, or will it be in a democratic / free way? And I think that's what's at play right now is, are we going globalism into socialistic, communistic control, or are we going to stay nationalized? And I think if the United States falls And it's about to if Biden gets put in. And to those who like Biden, I can just tell you, we will go into socialism if the chart is right. I don't think that's going to happen. I know the people listening to the show are going to go, Jeff, how could you be out of your mind? Well, I'm only going by what the chart says. It shows it's an exceedingly difficult path, but Trump's not going to give up. And again, my left brain is screaming at me going, Jeff, are you sure? If I'm reading this chart right, it's going to be a very challenging, difficult transition. But I think you're about to see hell come to breakfast. And I think it's been going to breakfast behind the scenes. We just haven't heard about it.
I don't mean to be sarcastic, but I can see all these blue governors saying, hang in there, folks. Should be 4 more years to flatten the curve and track, chip, vaccinate, genocide, and FEMA camp everybody and put the rest into smart city concentration camps. Then we can go back to quote-unquote normal. But let me just say this before we take a break.
No, you're right, Mel. And we will get microchipped. I can guarantee you won't be able to fly.
Oh, yeah.
License.
One thing, before we take a break, let me just say this. One thing I've noticed for the past few years was that the military-industrial complex, they must be hurting without a new war since Trump became president. In the back of my mind, Jeff, I've had this thought for a while. What else will they concoct so that the elite can fill their pockets once again? So I thought of George Orwell's quote, "The war is not meant to be won, it's meant to be continuous." That was the case with Vietnam and the war on terror. But let's just, change a few words and adapt the quote to today. The disease is not meant to be cured, it's meant to be continuous. And that's the case with most disease, including cancer, and now the new boogeyman, the coronavirus. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. And I think you're right on with that. Again, this shows a sustained period of subterfuge. We've been hearing, John Durham was going to march everyone off to Guantanamo Bay.
Right.
That could happen, but it's not going to happen that fast. It's not going to happen that fast. And they're going to fight like hell to cover each other's backs. That's, Julian Assange made an interesting quote, even though I know he gets discredited. If he could expose everything, he's probably right. 98% of Washington would be in deep trouble. They're going to fight like hell. When you have the justice, the investigation, and the judicial department all covering each other's backs, it's kind of hard to. It's a big club, like George Carlin said, and we ain't in it. They are. And I don't think that's just going to come toppling down magically in 5 minutes. I see this subterfuge going on over this next 4 years is going to really be, I think that's the fate of America, is this next 4 years. I really do.
I remember back in 1992, and we'll take a break in a moment, but in 92 when I went to a wedding in Venezuela, I used to go there all the time, loved the country, beautiful, rich country. And then at the hotel, I remember the militaries were surrounding the hotel one night, and Kissinger was there. I have a story, about that. I met him in the elevator, but it was during the time when Chavez, as a paratrooper, tried for the first time to take over. Well, he didn't succeed. Well, came December 1998, he won with 56.4% of the quote-unquote population vote, and the rest is history. Dominion has been domineering that country since then. When people say, well, Trump, go away, you probably might have a chance in 4 years if Biden doesn't do a good thing. But I'm thinking to those people, Biden has been around for almost 50 years, and he hasn't done a damn thing. And you expect him to just all of a sudden fix things? He's going to destroy everything Trump has done.
Biden won't be in long. You'd be lucky if he's in 6 months to a year.
Oh, Kamala Harris will take over for sure, and Pelosi. But when it comes to Trump, people saying, come back in 4 years, no chance. It's the same thing that happened in Venezuela. Once this octopus, and just right now with the election in Georgia, which, by the way, last night some of my relatives were contacting me saying, hey, look, the Republicans won in Georgia. And I said, that's fine. Go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and you'll see a different story. Yeah, and it is exactly what happened. So we potentially could lose both houses, the Senate and Congress, the executive. If this is the case, there's no return. In 4 years, your vote will mean nothing. The question is, why are we paying taxes? I'd just start throwing tea right now in every single bay, because this is the tea party. The revolution comes again. Why are we paying taxes? And by the way, and I hate to say we're going to take a break, but I just continue going on a tangent. When it comes to the $600, the pathetic $600 for the people, I don't want any money. Just let me open my business and get back on my feet. But why do we send $5,000 to a country that starts with the letter I? $5,000 for every single person. I mean, the equivalent. I know it's not being used to give money to the people, but it's that equivalent. Or we sent hundreds of millions of dollars to study gender in Pakistan. I would say if our country is suffering, all those funds should stay here. There should be a SAR when it comes to giving foreign aid. If there's a moment that we don't have a single person who's unemployed or on the streets or people who really, truly need the help, that money stays here. But let me get your answers on the other side. And when we come back, I want to do a lot of interrogation astrology with a lot of things that are coming in 2021. Jeff, how can people learn more about your services, your website, and so on?
The best way is Jeff at jeffharman.com. Jeff at jeffharman.com.
My apologies for getting into this little monologue, but I had to end that way because I remain optimistic. At the same time, I want us all to be prepared in the event that history repeats itself. I went through it. My family went through it for generations, more than once in 2 different countries. And I look at this beautiful United States of America that opened the doors to us. We made it here. It was the American dream. And now we're at the precipice of losing it. And I hope it doesn't happen. And I hope that Jeff and his astrology is right. We'll be right back 1 more hour with Jeff Harman. This is Mel Hostelrick, and you are listening to Veritas.
Thank you for listening to the first part of this important Veritas interview. To listen to the rest and all of our material, proceed to the members section or join the Veritas family by subscribing. Click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for Focus Life Force Energy, MMS, CBD Pure Hemp Oil, Divina Water, Pure Organic Sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and Veritas seasons, and other great products. And if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. And click the bell to be notified when new interviews are available. Now, proceed to the members section or subscribe to listen to the rest of the interview. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for listening to Veritas. Because you don't want to believe. You want to know.